Welcome to the God is Not an Asshole podcast. If you are one of the many people done with religious dogmatism, hang on. You might sense transcendence, but your church or other faith community never seem to get off the ground. You realize that honoring your conscience means more than fitting in and keeping hard-to-explain rules? Hang on. You could probably think of the goodness in your tradition, and you tried your best to save that baby, but there's so much bathwater. Join your hosts, David Norman Moore Jr. in California and Carrie Connolly in New Jersey, who are collaborating to bring on guests who have found life on the other side of fundamentalism. Guests with stories of how they have liberated themselves from beliefs that divide us from each other. None of our guests' narratives are identical, but we hope you'll find something in common with each of them. We invite you to experience our common bond as we all inspire even more of us to embrace the true self.
As you went through this tunnel of restrictive evangelical thought and theology, as you came out into the light of openness and joy, really, what happened with regarding, like you said, you didn't have family members that you were disappointing, but you certainly must have had friends who just said, Doug, you're going to go to hell or whatever.
Till this very day, yeah. No, still, yeah, literally on Facebook today. Yeah, somebody wrote that. Yeah, no, look, I've been greatly rewarded and benefited by people who disagree with me. It's a really important gift. And if you don't have people who disagree with you, you're really missing out on a great opportunity for life and growth, right? Like it's pretty central.
So how did it feel? I mean, I'm wondering, did you go through that tunnel, come out into the light like with lots of boldness and confidence, or did you come out thinking, man, what are people going to say? How are you feeling in that moment?
Yeah, well, temperamentally, I have a high level of confidence because I don't worry too much about getting that stuff wrong.
Okay.
Partly because I don't think that there's a vengeful God that I'm trying to appease. So honestly, once I start there, compared to some of other people I'm talking to, I'm like, the consequences for me being wrong about this are all social. There's nothing eternal here. I'm not being... God is not going to punish someone for the thoughts in their head. I promise you. Like, that is just not going to happen. So the consequences were low. So I had a high level of freedom and, near on disregard for like, okay, who cares if we get this wrong? Let's see if we can get it right.
Yeah.
And look, if John Calvin, when he was 24 to 28 and wrote his dogmas, he was probably right about some stuff. But I've known a lot of 24 to 28-year-olds. He was wrong about a lot of stuff too. That's fine.
Ooh.
Fair enough,
Yes,
right? Like
absolutely.
that's sort of how it goes. And now I'm 56 and I've read a lot of 56-year-old theologians and I'm wrong about a lot of stuff.
But the thing is, think about the legacy. I mean, John Calvin is stuck,
poor guy.
And so I think there's something to be said for being malleable and open to correction and humility. Those things are important because how do you stay in touch with the next generation, your own family, your own kids and grandkids or whoever? How do you stay connected with them if you're entrenched in a way, in a faith system that constricts you?
And if you've already got it figured out, life is just boring from there on out, right? Because what are you going to do? Like, you really think, and for any of us, do we really think we have a formula of understanding that can apply to every situation of things that matter? And we're just going to run the formula and it's going to always come out with us on the right? First of all, ridiculous. Secondly, what fun would that be? Like, where's life and growth and adventure,
right,
and spontaneity? Like, it just makes no sense.
The late
so
Peter
I've always
Gomes,
had
to your point, the late Peter Gomes, who was the chaplain at Harvard Divinity, he said that the Bible is like a map. And he said some people never take their eyes off the map when the destination is right in front of them. All the places they're looking for. Yeah.
That's how I am with my phone sometimes. Like, looking at Google Map, like, I think I'm there. Like, just look up. No, you're there. You'll see it. It's right there. That building that you're looking for that's on the map, it's right there in front of you. It happened to me just
People
yesterday.
are so fascinated with the map. That's all they talk about. They look at the map, they talk about the map, they preach about the map, and don't even look up.
That's hilarious. Yeah, look, that is so insightful. That is, look, and it's not, here's the thing. It's not just religion. I'm around a lot of non-religious people in my life on purpose and just by circumstance. We should not fool ourselves somehow into thinking that it's religion or our particular religious texts that force this on us. In fact, I would suggest that our religious traditions and our religious text should help us not do this. That's what they're best useful for, is to produce this humility you're talking about and perspectival understandings of things and know that there's more going on and you don't have to be in control. But man, I'm in situations where this kind of level of dogma and this level of certainty and this level of isolation from other ideas that don't agree with us, it's all over the place. Like it is not, certainly not held to any one religion. I have the privilege of working interfaith with people who in their own religions. Was just with a person who runs a group called Hindus for Human Rights. And she's really bothered by the way Hinduism becomes fundamentalist and turns against other people, and it's exclusivist, and friends in Islam that do that, and a friend who's
happening
a Sikh person.
India, as we speak. It's happening against the Punjabi, the Sikh people there.
Yes. Yeah, and it was with a Sikh person in London a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I mean, this is, look, it's a human practice to do this. This is what we do as people. And our traditions, our religions, our habits, they are best when they help us break from that. Yeah. So it is particularly shameful when our religions double down on it because they're supposed to be one of the parts of our human experience that should free us from that. Yeah. This is what Jesus's project was about. I'm much more in the Jesus tradition. I know bits and pieces of other traditions, but I know this particular one, sort of as first language. So I can speak about that's what Jesus is getting at, you have heard it said, but I say to you. And so it's fundamentally not only that God's not an asshole, but that you're not either, nor are those people that you're pretty sure are your enemies.
Thank you.
Right? He's going to say stuff like, a good Samaritan, which we just take as, a great thing. But, that would be like, pick your group that you think is a problem and a real threat to you and just insert good in front of them. That's the kind of emotional sense that good Samaritan would have had in Jesus' day.
How about good transgender people? Right now in this moment, right? In this society. So when you came out into a broader way of being, and you just mentioned that you have a lot of people in your world who are not religious. Tell me about your new friendships, your new relationships, because I found that it's sad that I had to give up really what I thought were good friendships and relationships, but people were more interested in keeping their beliefs than keeping their relationships. So tell me about your world of friendships now.
Yeah, it's good, it's rich, and it's also not the same as feeling like you're part of an overall more shared narrative, right? So I'm just still working on these ideas. So this stuff's like fresh, like 72 hours fresh from a conversation I just had earlier this week at a conference. The presenter there was talking about narratives and stories. And he used this metaphor where he said, narratives is the roadway. Stories are the automobiles that we're in. So we have our stories that are riding on a roadway or a highway. Okay. So someone has mapped out the road, right? Or you're going off-road, but you've got an overriding kind of narrative.
Okay.
So I'm around a lot of people where we share a same narrative. If we're religious or not religious, that we want to live in an inclusive world. We understand that binaries are damaging to each of us individually and to us collectively. We know that we have to deliberately work on systems and habits and behaviors that allow for participation and growth and all this kind of stuff. But we're in different vehicles. Or if I hop in their car, another faith or no faith or something, It's fine. I'm glad to ride. I've had Uber rides with people or sort of jumped in a car. But when you're in someone else's car, it feels a little different, right? The seats fit a little different. The smells are a little different. You might not pick that car. The music might be a little something. You don't feel quite at home. I'm at a lot of friendships where I'm jumping in other people's cars and it's fine. I also want to be in you see where I'm going with this metaphor? Like I want to be in the car of the story that I want to live into. Wow. And what I'm feeling like I'm going to have to do is to be in this new highway, this new narrative.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get on a motorcycle or drive by myself or ride, carpool with someone else, or I don't know, get into public transportation. I'm probably belaboring the metaphor.
No, but this is good.
I want to be in that vehicle as well and not just on the road. So I don't know. I'm kind of working because that was capturing some of the feeling I have about this stuff.
You took me back 40 years when I first moved to Santa Barbara here. And one night I was on the freeway and it was raining hard and my car stalled. And I got out and I was looking for those phones that they used to have before we had our own cell phones and everything. I was looking and a guy pulled over and he picked me up and he brought me home. And I remember when we were in the car, and remember, this is 40 years ago. I'm in my fundamentalist days. I was so grateful to him. And I asked him, "Are you a Christian?"
Yeah.
Not because I wanted to convert him. I was just wondering if, this decency came from, his Christian faith. And he said, must one be a Christian to do a good deed? And I was like, I was so embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed. It's 40 years later, and I'm still embarrassed. Right. Yeah, but that's what you took me to when you said, we're all in cars. We've got a similar narrative, but our stories are different. And I was presuming that we had the same story.
Same story. Yeah. I mean, isn't that there's just something about that. It's because so many of us have been in cars and on roads. And so, there's all these friendships. So I'm into it. I like it. But it doesn't feel quite as comfortable. Doesn't feel quite as at home. It's interesting because I'm learning whole new concepts and whole new stories and new ways of thinking about it. And that kind of thing is really fun. I'm a new guitar player. It's guitars by me. I started playing just like 14 months ago. And so every day I'm learning new things and I love that. But I also, when I grab my guitar, there's just a few riffs now that I can play. And I find myself just wanting to play some of those familiar things and I want to make a little music. I don't want to work at everything. I just want to play. And so I know how to play I'm mixing metaphors all up here, but I know how to play in the playground of the Christian tradition.
Yeah.
And I want that to be in this narrative. And so that's why talking to you and other people is just so great. And we try to do it in the work that we do is to give people the access to these other people. So I'm all for the other worlds too. It's great.
So Doug, what it feels like to me that you're saying, it's like the difference between Friendsgiving and Thanksgiving.
Wow.
I know it's improper to even look at that holiday as Thanksgiving anymore because it's Colonizer Day, but still it's the difference between being together with family and being together with friends. But you got to switch to the friends when the family is in chaos.
Yeah, totally. You got to go it alone. Man, I remember this so vividly a number of times in my life when I was a teenager and as an adult, like feeling like if I keep going down this road that I'm on, this narrative, this inclusive, God's not against us, God's for us narrative, I could end up alone. Yeah. I got a 1980s Whitesnake song running in my head. Here I go again on my own, walking down the lonely streets.
I met the drummer. He used to live here, by the way. Oh, but anyway,
come on. Did you really?
Yeah.
I'm working on that guitar riff right now. That's really fun. And look, some of that's temperament, right? That's how an Enneagram 8 like me sort of thinks about the world. Like I'm going to ultimately be alone, nobody, all that stuff. But it's also kind of it's a true emotional response that yeah, sometimes it's just hard. You're just going to be, the only one riding in this car, and you wish some people were on the road trip with you.
I think about the same thing. Sometimes I dream. I wish I could just. We have a fire pit in the backyard, and I just think I would just love to invite some people over with shared history.
Mhm.
To just sit and just enjoy one another. But so many of those people have gone in. Well, I've gone in the different direction. They
Yeah,
stayed in
yeah.
the, and so I miss that.
Dude, I mean, I think now, we should reflect as upper middle-aged people, because I've realized that I'm now at the age where I have more miles of memory behind me than's likely going to be in front of me. And there's all of these people, all of this time that I've spent with so many people that I know, no matter who I meet tomorrow around here, like locally, that I could see a lot, it's not going to compare to the 20 years I spent as a pastor of that church with this group of people, or the 35 years total that there's been in this kind of work, right? Like some of those are, I'm not going to get 35 more years, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there, and that's a recognition that, like, okay, how am I then going to spend this? And it can get a little sad. There's a period where you're thinking there's still more in front of me than there has been behind, and I can start gaining up a bunch of relationships and think about being in these friendships for 20 or 30 or 40
Right,
years.
right,
I used
right.
to talk about that a lot. And now it's like, okay, maybe not 30, maybe 30, maybe not, depending if my wife's around. It's just, let's talk about 40 years. I'm like, okay, but we're going to be beating the odds. So, all right. And so that's a really hard thing, right? You're like, how much more change should I do if it's going to risk any relationship? Because the thing you said earlier, I totally agree with, where people are willing to give up relationships for beliefs. And then I think, maybe I have been too, right?
Yeah,
Maybe I've said, I need to get out of this story of this car right now,
yeah.
because I need to take this exit ramp onto this other road that's going this other narrative over here. And I'm willing to get out of your car. Like, I haven't only been kicked out of the cars,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. If you hear other people's perspectives, they might be, I don't know, Doug left, or like you said, like you made choices and you left, and people are like, I didn't kick you out,
Yeah.
you left.
So
Okay,
what do
yeah,
we
you're
do
right.
with that, Doug?
I don't know. That's what grief and regret is about, I think. I don't know. I don't know what you do with it, except be honest when you can, right? And when honesty presents itself to you, you should take it as a pretty magical moment, because we're pretty good at deceiving ourselves. So when honesty fights through, it's
Okay,
like,
so
okay,
here's another piece, and you can do with it what you will. But one of the things that I've noticed, Doug, is that, and this has to do with cultural masculinity.
Mm.
I have found that as I have done work on myself and transformed and grown, that I don't need to be the man. And so some of my best relationships are with women, you
Mm.
know, perfectly healthy friendships, but we connect better because I don't have a need to be the man anymore. I didn't even know I had that. It
Yeah,
was subconscious, but I was
yeah,
performing a role. I mean, the
totally.
role said, even in marriage, the role said that I was supposed to be the head,
Yep.
and my wife was supposed to submit, back in those days. And so that's because that's gone, and I don't feel the burden of having to be in charge. Sometimes it doesn't connect with men as well as and we need men in our lives.
Yeah, dude, it's true. I mean, that's the other thing that age has brought along. I have male friendships and relationships that are deeper now, but also some that, like, we just can't seem to get over or beyond or to the next place. And a
It's
lot
always small
of,
talk, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and a lot
it's
of openness and deep wondering, consideration and stuff.
yeah,
And
you're
I've
talking
realized
about
also,
sports or you're talking about
yeah,
bands, music, you're talking whatever, but you don't get to the deep stuff.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I realized that as a pastor, there was a sense where I could pull that stuff off because it was part of the role.
Mm.
Right. And I'm not sure it was a cover or it was a stand-in, but it was just allowed for there. You could think about those things, but interpersonally, like let's not get all, wondering about things.
Well, don't you think that some of that had to do with our heteronormativity and transphobia and all of that stuff? We had to be real men.
Yeah, I do. I do think so. And I think that those same things show up in other communities where heteronormativity isn't the dominant, but some other narrative is the dominant. These same kinds of bad practices show up.
Okay.
Where people are told who can talk and who can't talk and who should be listened to and who's safe and what the rules are going to be and the rules aren't going to be. I mean, that stuff doesn't only exist in male-dominated patriarchal systems. It's, it exists. It exists. It's around, and it manifests differently, and it's has different reward systems in different places in different ways. But boy, it is. I operate both in the religious space and political spaces, right? And so I can assure you, I'm in super progressive political spaces, and there's entire systems of community agreements and how do you fix wrongs for it, because it's just known that it's going to happen and it's just expected, and it's going to turn into a full contact sport at some point if we're not careful. So
I just had a conversation with a woman who was in the middle of that and actually had a heart attack last week because that kind of back and forth was going on, and she felt unheard, and she was carrying it with her and went home from a board meeting and ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, it's so yeah, I'm not doing whataboutism. I'm not letting anything off the hook. I'm saying that in my life, and maybe similar to yours, I know how that impulse is shrouded in male dominance, heteronormativity, and for me, white male normativity. And in other spaces where that's not the predominant narrative, something very similar also, the human experience also shows up, and it's in another form, and it's fueled by an additional sets of stories. So we're all in this thing together, and to me, that's part of the good news, right? Okay, so we don't have a single problem where we're trying to find the solution. We have a grand predicament, a big dilemma that requires multiple responses. So we have to find ways to be multi-responsive to these circumstances and situations, and that's been a real growth curve for me. I've put myself intentionally inside of some other systems, and where the leadership structures were designed differently by different people of different social locations, and it's been familiarly problematic. Like, I recognize what's happening right now, and I didn't see this coming.
So we need healthy community. We just
and it's hard, man. It is. Look, and this is why I think, not to be overly like, okay, back to my car for a second, but in the story that I come from and you come from, because we're nested, the Christian story is like a little, Ukrainian nesting doll is nested inside of the Jewish text. The book of Genesis is like this ancient wisdom book that starts out with a story in which there's a son of God who has two sons, and one of those sons kills the other one.
Not late in the narrative, but
that's right. Like scene one, cut to right. So
there's
in
no
the story,
suspense.
That's right. In the story, as a story, we've got 4 characters, maybe a couple of bit characters, and we got a 25% murder rate. So we're supposed to, I think, recognize, okay, there's something that's been reflected on by human literature ongoingly. So we should be careful to not think that we have only a particular problem. We do. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We have figured out ways. I can think of the writings of the Apostle Paul that's like, honest to God, we invent ways of doing evil. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, we'll read the script and then come up with some additional ways to, do this to each other.
You got me thinking about Rene Girard.
See,
that we all
Gerard
do this.
is on it. He's like, we got a problem, and we're going to come up with a scapegoat at one point or the other. And
somebody's got to
die.
We're gonna be fine after somebody dies.
Yes, yeah. Whether it's Rene Girard or is it Foreigner, it's like there's going to be a heartache tonight. There's going to be a heartache. Like, that is the thing we know. Like, there's just some things we know to be true, right? And so, what do we do about this stuff, right? We need to recognize and then say, so then what do we do, and how does it get any better? And is there a call for it to get better, or are we just doing harm reduction? Is that the best we can ever get to? Is harm reduction? And no, I think there is a call for something else. I think Jesus's call for what he in the text I read is referred to as the kingdom of God. I like to think of as a world in which all people are seen, everyone has enough, and no one has to be afraid. Like, yeah, let's do it. Let's pursue that world and know that we are the seeds of our own struggle. We are, human beings, it seems to me, and I keep wanting to check this with people that know biology and the animal kingdom better, but I think human beings are the only creatures that self-harm on a consistent basis. So there's something about consciousness that is connected to self-harm. And not only do we self-harm, we harm others. And so there's something in us that allows for that to be the case, that we have to be working through and to. And I don't know if humanity's consciousness is developing and growing, getting better. I want to believe it is.
Because I want to believe that it is.
Because if we don't know, I'd rather believe in that future than the other one, right? Until I'm proven wrong. Like, I'm going to have a default on this. So I don't know that. And so I guess as I've been like, okay, we need response mechanisms, not just reaction, but we need to have different ways to respond and different ways to engage, because there's some things that are just going to come up.
Yeah.
And we will find ways to cast those into more immovable forces, so we act as if it's not on us. And I just think it's on us as human beings.
We have definitely gone overtime, but I'm just having such a good time just having this conversation with you. So, I want to thank you. We started out talking about, the indictment of Donald Trump. And before we stop, I just, another conversation I had with my wife yesterday was, we noticed how so many people in the legal system who are carrying this heavy burden of responsibility, are African Americans. The district attorney, William Bragg, and Letitia James, and the person down there in Georgia. And so we were wondering, is this just coincidental, or does it mean that white folks don't want to take responsibility? I don't know. Or whiteness, not white folks, but whiteness.
That is so interesting. And that the positions that have the authority to bring to bear the power of the state, Black people are in those positions in the places that we've mentioned. Like, that is a noticeable reality.
And do you think?
And look, and let's not fool ourselves. That is part of the pushback right now.
Oh, yeah.
That is part of what.
Absolutely.
That is.
That's the finger's going to be it's going to be a finger of blame pointed, at them for being Black.
Yes.
But and then I think about Merrick Garland. The pressure's on him because here's a white guy and he's watching the Black folks do everything, and people have expectations of him.
And people are going to be like, yeah, let's go. And if it is in perception, becomes that there was some race narrative that protected its own and left other prosecutors out to do the difficult work, that's not going to go well. And look, that's 100% possible that kind of thing could go down, or people could feel that way, or that both of those are true.
But
So,
it's a heavy
yeah,
burden. It's not like I don't see it as being motivated by vindictiveness or anything like that. This takes a lot of thought. You have to factor in the safety of your family. So do
yes.
the grand jurors, everybody.
That is so insightful. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Wow.
Well, look, if you happen to be driving through Santa Barbara and you want to have a beer in the backyard.
Yes, I do. In fact, our son and soon-to-be daughter-in-law have moved. Well, they're in LA now, but her parents have a place in Santa Barbara, so they get down there a lot. So we might get.
Wow.
So there are more chances just built into my why do I end up in California rhythms that is expanded by a bit. So
I would love that.
That would really be a treat. And look, I would talk about this stuff with you on podcasts or just talking about stuff. So
yeah,
anytime.
I really appreciate that. Carrie missed out, but we'll do it again with Carrie.
Could we please? That would be that'd be life goal met. So that would be excellent.
Yay.
Thank you so much for being here today. We are people who have left behind performance-based religion and the shame that comes with it. Maybe you have a personal liberation story to tell, and we want to know about it. Please contact us on Twitter at God is not an asshole, or text 805-703-8393, because the world needs to know that God is not an asshole.